Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. RCMP Commissioner Bob Paulson was born in Lachute, Quebec, where he served in the cadets until the end of high school, when a career in the military seemed like a natural progression. He served as a jet pilot and a flight instructor until he made the decision to leave the military and later join the RCMP. He has served at every rank of the RCMP and now serves as its commissioner. Bob Paulson joins me to talk all about life beyond politics. Bob Paulson, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's really a great pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you for asking me.
You've got a tremendously busy schedule and a pretty important job, so it's nice of you to take the time out of that to allow us to learn a little bit more about you, I suppose. And I thought a natural way to learn about you would be to ask about your childhood and find out where you're from and what you were like as a kid. So we'll start with the where you're from part.
Okay, well, I'm from Lachute, Quebec, which is just down the road from here,
Right.
actually. And I grew up there until I was about 17, 18. And had a good childhood. I had a couple of brothers and a sister. I was the baby of the family.
Were you really?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
So you were the youngest of four?
Youngest of four,
Okay.
That's right, yeah. And my father was a Winnipegger, Icelander, who met my mother, who was a francophone from Trois-Rivières after the war. And so there was some family in the Lachute, Brownsburg area, so they moved there and had their children, and there we were.
How did they meet? Because it sounds like they weren't necessarily hanging out in the same parts of the
No, when he comes, so when my father comes back from the war, for some reason he goes through Trois-Rivières.
Really?
Yeah. And meets my mother,
Right.
who's a unilingual francophone. And
Did your dad speak French?
No.
Oh, that must have been an interesting first
Yeah.
date.
So my mother became perfectly fluently bilingual. My father, I think, struggled with the language. But yeah, they met in Trois-Rivières and they courted and married. And then he settled there in Lachute, and that was that. He was in the packaging business.
Okay, I was going to ask what he did, yeah.
Yeah, and she worked for the school board in Lachute, and so we spent our youth there and had quite an active youth. Played hockey. I was a Army cadet. That was, I guess, the feature of my childhood was in the cadet program.
Did you choose that, or did they choose that for you?
Well, I kind of had to follow my brothers in everything they did.
You had to?
Well,
or
that seemed how
you
it went.
chose to?
Yeah. So
Okay.
as the youngest, I guess,
Yeah.
I just sort of followed along. And both of my brothers were in the Army Cadets.
Right.
And so when I was of age, I joined as well. And I found that to be a very positive experience.
Did you, what did you like about it? Because for some people it is, I mean, it's very regimented and there's a code of behavior and
Yeah, well, you know, I like
expectation for
I guess I like the friendship that it offered, the activities,
Right.
the summer camps, because in those days, and I don't know if they still do it, but they would pay you to go to summer camp.
Now that does sound appealing.
Yeah, and I think that appealed to my parents
I
particularly.
bet it did. With four of you.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so you know, when you'd go to the 6-week camp, you'd get like $100, and that
Wow.
was.
And your parents would get 6 weeks off.
And they'd get 6 weeks off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually I started going there as what they referred to as a call-out, so as a supervisor or a ranked person there.
Okay.
And then you got paid like real money, like reserve money.
Wow.
So that was very good.
Okay.
And it was in Valcartier in the summertime.
Right.
And so I kept my summers busy and kept my winters busy, and I seemed to thrive there, and I enjoyed it.
Were you a good kid?
Yeah.
Or were you just a regular boy?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I think
There
I
was
was.
a pause.
Well, there was a pause because you know, I was an active kid. Put it that way. I didn't get in too much trouble that would have gotten in my way, but I know my way around trouble.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you eventually left high school,
Yeah.
you joined the military.
Yeah.
Did that seem like a natural progression for you? Was that something that you, at that point, decided was going to be the right career for you, or did you have other thoughts about what you might want to do?
You know, funnily enough, I was pursuing a career both in the RCMP and the military.
No kidding.
Yeah. My next oldest brother was a very successful naval officer. And at that time he wasn't successful, but he was in the Navy. Okay. And so he had joined the military through the officer candidate training plan and presented that as an option to me. And I had been interested in flying for no other reason than it was very far away from anything I'd ever experienced. So I applied to the military at the same time that I applied to the RCMP. And the RCMP said I was too young, and the military said, come on in. So
the rest was history for that point in time.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Did you bear the RCMP any ill will for telling you were too young?
No, not at all, because I thought I didn't quite understand the full weight of responsibility that attaches to policing, and certainly, given how my military career unfolded, it was probably good that I waited a little bit before I took on the responsibility of being a police officer. So
let's talk about the military career. You went to, where did you go first?
I went to Moose Jaw,
right,
and got my wings as a pilot in Moose Jaw, and then I stayed there as a pilot instructor,
right,
as a line instructor in Moose Jaw.
What's involved in getting your wings?
Well, you go through, it's about 2 years of training. So they start you off first, you go through officer candidate training in Chilliwack, where you get, I guess, indoctrinated into the military. And having been in the reserves and the cadets, I had a basic understanding of what the military was all about. But after that, then it was to Portage-la-Prairie, where you would fly on a musketeer, and that was called primary flying selection, to see if you had the aptitude. If, like, anybody can learn to fly, but I think there's some economics involved there, and so they want to make sure that you have the aptitude to be able to take the skills in a given period of time. So after that, there was a series of training episodes in land survival and sea survival, high altitude indoctrination, and then to the Tudor jets, which the snowbirds fly, of course. For about 200 hours of instruction in all-weather flying and formation flying. Yeah, it was quite something.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed flying. I enjoyed that style of flying.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the military less than the flying?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I could say that I enjoyed the military. Yeah, I think that's probably true. I really enjoyed flying, and I didn't, young man that I was, I didn't really adapt, frankly, to the military lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you went to university.
First I went to North Bay,
okay,
Ontario, and then I left the forces from North Bay.
Right.
Went back to, got married.
Yeah.
Went to Simon Fraser
right.
in Lower Mainland, and while I was going there, I was working some night jobs in a bar, and then the RCMP kept coming through the bar and doing bar checks, first in uniform, and then in plainclothes. Some of the plainclothes would come in, and they were trying to talk to me about things that I would see in my job and whatnot.
And so would you know that the plainclothes were the RCMP?
Yeah.
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 They'd identify themselves, or you just had an eagle eye at that point already?
I think we kid ourselves in the plainclothes business that we're undercover when you can be spotted, unless you're a really skilled undercover.
Yeah.
You can be picked off, and it was pretty clear to me who was who in those days.
Right.
But I formed some relationship with the officers and started asking them about their job. And of course, I recalled my interest in the RCMP earlier in my youth, and so then I put an application in from Chilliwack, BC.
Now, I have never been a member of either the military or the RCMP, so I assume that they're very different organizations.
Yeah.
But there would be an overall structure. Mm-hmm. There would be a code of conduct and a structure that you'd have to follow, and a levels of authority.
Right.
And if that hadn't gelled for you with the military, why did you think it would work for you with the RCMP?
Well, they're administered differently. They manifest themselves differently. So, for example, when I was in the military, and it was a fairly important job of flying airplanes and, adhering to the rules of both the military and of the sky. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty sort of laid out what the expectations were, whereas in the RCMP, you had a fair bit of freedom to go and do the work that you were being tasked to do. In other words, the mission was very clear to me when I got into the RCMP, and the empowering, sort of supporting, enabling processes that were the paramilitary features of the RCMP were very supportive. Like, I was given a lot of latitude, as all our officers are, to do the job of protecting and keeping Canadians safe.
Was that because, did you serve in a remote community at first, or where did you serve?
My first community was Chilliwack, British Columbia, yeah.
And when you talk about that leeway that you had, is it just a sense that you're trained to do your job and you're trained to be able to cope with various situations, so the expectation is that you're the one there, you're the best able to judge how to react?
Yeah, but you're going into people's lives,
right.
and you're having to sort of untangle and bring some sense of order to people that are in very vulnerable or difficult circumstances. And it's not like the whole organization, you know, engages on every one of those things. So you're the officer that's out on patrol. You go to a domestic, or you go to a robbery or a burglary, and it turns on your ability to sort of get in there and understand what has happened. I found that very exciting, and you know, I've often said that when I got in the RCMP, it fit like a glove.
Really?
And I really enjoyed the investigative elements of the job.
How long was it before you were able to actually take part in those investigative elements? I mean, what were you first doing when you started on the job?
Well, I was a general duty police officer,
okay.
So like a uniformed police officer in a community responding to calls. And then I started taking an interest in some of the calls that I was going to. Like I would go to a lot of burglaries, and I would start to see patterns of who was doing burglaries, and I would talk to people in the community and do neighborhood inquiries. And I began to be able to sort those out, and I would find out who was doing the burglaries, and I would charge them. In fact, one of my exciting cases when I was in uniform was having cleared about 60 or 70 burglaries that had taken the town by storm. In fact, it was on the front pages of the newspaper, people, and we couldn't figure it out. And it ended up being, you know, a drug-addicted woman with a Pinto that was going around and just kicking in the doors, getting through the windows, taking money and jewelry. So we found her. I spoke to her. I got a confession from her. And then I think people were interested in having me do that full time. So I got into a plainclothes section in the burglary section, then the street crew, then the major crime section, then the district major crime section. So it was a lot of fun.
It would have been fun, but you would also have been you would have been seeing a lot of the not so great side of humanity as well. And when you have to do that on a daily basis, I have to imagine that it also takes a kind of toll on your own sense of people. Maybe not so much necessarily your fellow citizens, the people that you surround yourself with, but the community as a whole. Did it impact your view?
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah, I've had friends that that knew me before I got into the RCMP who, like one of my nicknames when I was a young guy in Lachute was the priest. They called me the priest because I was a nice, easygoing guy. And then, so that didn't stay with me once I got into police work, because I became more direct, and
right.
I sometimes get get described as being very direct and aggressive. I've had friends say that there were changes in me, and that's, I think, a feature of police work. It can isolate officers, and the challenge for the leadership of the force is to make sure that it doesn't happen, because the RCMP is built on the principles of community policing. In fact, I was just in the north recently, and to the extent that we are accepted and credible by the community that we serve, then we're effective. So if we isolate ourselves, then it's not very effective. But it does have an effect.
Yeah, and it would be an effect that would kind of not just permeate your own self, but could also impact, you've talked about friends noticing it, but family too.
Yeah, that's true.
Your family could really be affected by that as well. So it's a trick to find out how you are able to ensure that your officers can...
I'm thinking of, you mentioned having an effect on family.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter, when she was quite young and we were living in Chilliwack, there was a famous episode in our family of where she was suspected of having gone through the hedge.
Okay.
And
my gosh.
this is a capital offense. But
she was suspected of having gone through
that's
the hedge.
right.
Okay.
And so we ended up...
Who suspected her
well,
of such behavior?
the officer in the family.
Okay. All right.
And then I ended up interrogating her.
Okay.
And
in full interrogation mode?
Yeah. And
yeah, why not?
But, you know, she remembers that vividly.
I bet.
But it wasn't like a full interrogation with lights and everything. It was
you didn't use a phone book or anything.
Why is this man so bent on finding out if I went through the hedge? Of course, she denies ever having gone through the hedge.
Right.
But
and there were no witnesses.
There were no witnesses.
Okay.
It turned on my ability to get her to confess.
And
she wouldn't.
Oh, there you go. Your toughest.
I still suspect her.
Okay. While we're on this topic, you have a son and 2 daughters. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you actually, when dates came to your house to pick up your daughters, was it a sad night for those dates? Were they frightened out of their minds?
Some of them were.
Good.
Yeah, some of them were. Because I would bring in my colleagues to help me occasionally.
You?
Well, no, we would be my oldest daughter, Sarah, who's a lawyer in Vancouver now. In the day, she'd always want to present her friends to me, and then there's a couple of my close friends that are like uncles to her, and so she would want to introduce her friends, and of course...
Friends meaning the male ones? Or
yes, male friends,
potential boyfriends?
Yeah,
okay.
or actual boyfriends.
Oh, okay.
And that would always end up being quite the extravaganza.
Why would she want to bring that on herself?
I don't know. But it was always helpful to sort of, map out the character of these potential suitors. Mm-hmm. And I think it was helpful for me, and it was perhaps helpful for her.
Did you ever run a background check on any of her dates?
No.
Oh, that's very good of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because you're not supposed to.
Okay. Were you ever wearing a weapon when you answered the door?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Did either of your daughters ever marry?
I'd always make a point of,
yes,
because I was in plainclothes, and so you would get different sort of ways of having holsters. Sometimes you'd have shoulder holsters, or sometimes it'd be stuck in your...
Yeah.
And so I'd always make sure, even though, I didn't have it on, if one of her boyfriends were coming over, I'd put it on.
And what was the reaction?
Well, there was always an eye. You could tell where the eyes would go, and they would always be polite, and but their eyes would be fixated on the device.
That must have been a lot of fun for you.
It was a lot of fun.
I bet it was.
It's funner now looking back at it, but yeah.
I think truly that you were able to live most dads' dreams. Most dads of daughters' dreams.
Yes.
Most dads really wish that they were in that position themselves.
Yeah.
So that's a dream come true for you.
Yeah.
So you've had a very you talked about your time in various levels of policing in various different areas of policing. You worked undercover.
Well,
did you?
I worked undercover in the sense that I was a plainclothes officer.
Yes.
And then we did a lot of undercover operations for homicides. But in the RCMP, as in most police forces, the actual undercover guy is the guy that is dealing with the target.
Right.
And so I would be supervising those. I wouldn't be the actual undercover guy.
Did you ever face a situation where you feared for your life? Yes,
actually. And ironically enough, it was in uniform. And so it was in Courtenay when I was in Courtenay Detachment. And I had a partner whose name is Kim Aish. I love her to this day. She is no longer in the force. She's in Prince Rupert. But she saved my bacon a couple times, actually. One time I'd been dispatched to a disturbance at a house in Courtenay. And when I got to the door, a guy in his underwear, covered in blood, came to the door, and I could see arterial spray all along the walls inside of the house. And so my suspicions were that somebody had either been killed or is very closely approaching death. So I wanted to enter the house, and he resisted, and we had a fight at the door, and then the guy who was spraying the blood came around the corner, and he jumped on me as well. So Kim came to my rescue, and the one guy was going for my gun, and the other guy was on my back choking me, And so Kim showed up and helped me sort it out. But
Holy Dinah.
yeah, it was a little close there.
Did things like that leave a lasting impact?
Yeah, because I could describe it a lot more in detail. It's, those episodes where I don't know that at the time I feared for my life, but shortly afterwards I thought, okay, that was pretty close.
Sure.
And like they were going for my gun.
Yeah.
And it was in the day that we had the revolver, and so we didn't have the locking mechanism in our holster that we do today. So had they got it, that would have been that.
Does that type, or going through that type of experience, would that affect how you viewed the safety of the people around you as well?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a real sense of camaraderie and community and dependence that you develop in policing. I think that's true of any police force, and it comes as a result of those kind of circumstances where,
right.
You may disagree with someone over, an issue in the office, but when it comes time to doing our job, we're always looking out for each other. Yeah.
That actually interests me in terms of your current position, because when you do the type of work that you do, where essentially you're protecting Canadians, you're protecting people every single day, you're putting your own lives on the line to do so, and thus in many ways the safety and security of your families as well. You really hope that other people understand that sacrifice, that this is a chosen career, but that there are still sacrifices involved. How do you as a leader manage to bridge the gap between, ensuring that you have financing, ensuring that you have the things that you need to run the organization properly, and still keeping face with the people who you're in charge of, basically, the force in general?
Yeah. Well, good question. I think, the short answer is that we have standards that we maintain in terms of officer safety, use of force, officer protection devices, and those types of things. We have fairly rigid and evolved standards. I think it's always the responsibility of the supervisor or the manager to be bringing that back to the members, because the men and women of the RCMP, as any police force, they want to go. They're like thoroughbreds that want to go out and they want to catch bad guys and they want to protect Canadians. And so the challenge is to make sure that people are thinking safely and acting safely without getting to the point where, we're starting to offend the sensibilities of Canadians. In other words, when you do a traffic check, sometimes down in different parts of the United States, if you're caught for speeding, the officers react as though you have a machine gun or a grenade in your car. Guns are out, and all they're going to do is give you a ticket.
Right.
That's not the Canadian experience, right?
Not generally.
So
not unless they're a date for one of your daughters.
So that is a bit of a challenge, making
right.
sure that officers know how to be safe, how to act safe, and how to do their jobs in a safe manner without going too far. And sadly, it seems we continue to lose officers. It's a dangerous job. It's inherently dangerous. We put officers in difficult situations, and it's a weighty responsibility to make sure that they're going out there with everything that they need to do their job.
Why do you think someone does become a police officer? There must be a lot of reasons, but is there one answer that seems to fit every person who comes in, that there's this interest in serving the public, or is it more than that? What is it?
No, I think it is. I think it is the interest in engaging with the public on those kind of issues. I think there's an element of doing justice, catching bad guys. Mm-hmm. I think that continues to be a noble pursuit. Mm-hmm. And those people that come to the force generally are people that like dealing with other people. I think in years gone by we'd seen people that want to sort of be the boss of people, right? And that's less the case these days, hardly at all. In fact, we're getting some very educated, some very gregarious, some very energetic people that want to go into communities and help them sort it out. In fact, having just come from the north, last night I arrived from Yellowknife, You know, we have, I went to a place called Saxe Harbor, and that's north, that's 3 hours north of Yellowknife. And I walked into, well, I flew into the airport, was met by two of our young officers. They're both from Ottawa here.
Really?
Yeah. They'd grown up together, they'd gone to school together. One guy went off to join the military. The other guy joined the RCMP. They both played hockey together. And so they go off into their careers, and then they end up stationed at Saxe Harbor together. And now they're trying to reinvigorate the skating rink that had gone down, and people had abandoned it. But I saw in those two young men, both 29, 30 years old, just this overwhelming desire to help those people out. And they were very well received by those members of the community, and they were part of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've talked a couple times about catching the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered, because, you know, we talk so much now about preventing crime and the circumstances that can cause crime, and you know, helping kids to try and understand how they can choose different paths. But is there still a segment of the population that's just the bad guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there's full-time bad guys that do nothing but bad things, right? And those are the people that we need to go after. Like, you always want to do the prevention. I mean, you know, arresting bad guys is only half of our mandate. The other half, as you've pointed out, is prevention. And we're very experienced, and I will say very good at the prevention, at community policing, at trying to help people avoid getting into, you know, the life of crime or getting exposed to the risks of criminality. But then there's a certain segment of people, like organized criminals, that do nothing but bad things, and there's only really one way to deal with them, and that is to bring them before the courts and have them charged criminally.
Has your sense of the justice system changed since you started on this path?
No, I think I've gained a full understanding of the complexity of the justice system. And I think we have one of the best justice systems on the planet, frankly, all in: police, courts, probation, corrections. It's a very complex apparatus. But so I guess if anything has changed is the amount of respect I have for it.
When you're not doing all of this, do you have time to do anything else?
Not lately. But no, you know, I like to read. I like to run. I haven't been running. I've run all my adult life, and then for the last probably 6 months, I've had to put it down, and I gotta make some changes in my life. So.
Get back on track.
Yeah, get back on track. But I like to listen to music, and I like to read.
Van Morrison, I understand. Is that right?
I like
You like all kinds of music.
I've just hooked on Miles Davis here lately.
Oh,
and in fact, I've been listening to Bye Bye Blackbird all day long.
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of go in spurts like
Right.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you would take the time to be here today. It's just been a true pleasure.
Well, thank you very much.